From the largest election team on local television, Salud Carbajal, Brad Hallen. A live congressional debate with questions from our panel and submitted by you. Now, here's Scott Hennessy.
Hello, thank you for joining us for this News Channel special edition. I'm Scott Hennessy. Tonight, we host a congressional forum between Democratic Congressman Salud Carbajal and Republican challenger Dr. Brad Allen. Congressman Carbajal is joining us live over Zoom, and Mr. Allen is joining us in person in our News Channel studio here in Santa Barbara. You may notice he's wearing an earpiece. That is so he can hear Mr. Carbajal's answers. I'm joined by political analyst and reporter Jerry Roberts, as well as Newshawk reporter Josh Molina. Thank you both for being here. For the next hour, we'll be asking the candidates questions on key topics. That also includes questions from you, our viewers. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to each question. If one brings up the other candidate during their answer, we will give that candidate 30 additional seconds to respond. Both candidates will have up to 1 minute for opening and closing statements. Each candidate agreed to these rules several weeks in advance. The candidates took part in a guessing game ahead of this debate to determine who goes first. Based on those results, Mr. Allen will begin. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Brad Allen. I'm a pediatric heart surgeon that's worked in major universities in the United States and Canada, as well as veterans hospitals and private practice. So I understand healthcare in all aspects and how to fix it. I'm also a medical researcher, having published over 100 papers and book chapters, been invited to lecture all over the world, and been inducted into the Medical Honor Society. So I know how to solve problems. I'm also a small business owner, having started a skincare company with my wife, so I understand the problems businesses are facing and how to fix them. You know, career politicians in general have only worked in government, so their answer to everything seems to be throw more money at it or more regulations. You know, in my 40 years as a pediatric heart surgeon, I found that that rarely worked in the real world. I want to bring the solutions and problem-solving skills I've learned through my many years in all these areas to Washington, because I believe our problem now is not that we don't have enough career politicians there, we have too many. And it's going to take somebody not a career politician if we're going to try to fix our problems. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Representative Carbajal, you have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you to KYT for hosting this forum and to the viewing public. For those that don't know a lot about me, let me tell you, I am Salud Carbajal. I immigrated to this country when I was 5 years old. I'm the youngest of 7. Early, my father was a miner. He then moved us to Ventura County, where he worked as a farm worker. Many of summers, I joined him. I know what it's like to struggle and to put food on the table and to make paycheck stretch week to week, day to day. I know what it's like. And despite those economic challenges, I was lucky enough to have done well in school, went to UCSB, eventually got my master's, joined the United States Marine Corps Reserves, served my country, and I'm very proud of that. I know there's a lot of challenges that our country and the Central Coast is facing right now. Inflation, increased costs for gas, groceries, childcare, housing. I know because my family is experiencing those as well. And I've been working to address those issues and other issues, other threats that our country and our Central Coast faces. Fire, drought, and other issues. And I look forward to this debate to discussing the issues further.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. We will now move on to the questions. Our first question comes from a viewer. Alina Salmonen writes, California is facing dire consequences from climate change, from worsening wildfires to intense storms, contributing to coastal erosion that halts Amtrak train routes. What is your vision for fighting climate change, and how do you plan to work across the political divide to address this issue in a divided Congress? Mr. Allen, we will begin with you.
Look, you know, one of the things that politicians tend to do is they tend to look at one part of something. For instance, they stopped drilling, which pushed the gas prices through the roof. Except that didn't make the planet cleaner, because what ended up happening is that places like Germany didn't have natural gas. They started firing up coal plants. Energy costs went up, and what happened there? more jobs shipped to China, which is building hundreds of coal plants. We need to understand when we're fighting climate change that there are unintended consequences sometimes of our actions. And as I said, stop drilling only made the planet dirtier. So I agree that we need a clean planet. We need to do everything we can to keep our planet green. But as a doctor, when I do something, I always look at the unintended consequences of those actions. Very often, career politicians don't, but it sounds good on the stump. Oh, we're going to stop drilling. Well, what happened? Gas prices went up and we made the planet dirtier. So we need to look at everything when we're looking at climate change, not just one aspect of the issue.
Thank you. Mr. Carbajal, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. We produce more oil and gas today than we ever have. We're a net producing country. And certainly what we need to do is make sure that we're addressing climate change by investing in renewable energy, solar, offshore wind, battery storage, and at the same time reducing our emissions. So what we need to do is just make sure that we are taking steps forward to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, which is the #1 reason why we have climate change. And we need to do that across the aisle. I belong to the Climate Solutions Caucus, made up of bipartisan individuals, Republicans and Democrats, trying to find solutions to address this challenge. This is not about drilling and producing more oil. This is about going forward with a sense of urgency to addressing climate change, as we did with the Inflation Reduction Act, which makes the highest investment towards addressing climate change in our country's history.
Carbajal, let's go now to political analyst Jerry Roberts for the next question.
Thanks, Scott. With gas prices going up again, President Biden and his economic advisors are pressuring oil companies, both in public and in private, to reduce their record profits as a critical step in bringing prices down. Please explain the reasons you believe gas prices are high, and tell us the relative importance you place on oil company profits as a factor. And I guess it goes to Salud first.
Yes, he'll go first.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, oil companies are experiencing the highest profits they've received in decades right now. We need to make sure that we are making sure they're not gouging the American people. They're making this profit off of you, all the families, and everyone around them. I was part of the legislation that we pushed forward to stop anti-gouging. We need to do more things like that. But more importantly, we need to make sure that we're addressing this challenge by investing in renewable energy. Oil prices are set globally. And as part of Putin's aggression towards Ukraine, that had a lot to do with part of the global setting of the price of oil. The president has released from our Strategic Petroleum Reserve millions of barrels over the past 6 months. I've asked him to do it again. It's my understanding that this president is going to release another 15 million barrels of oil next month. Those are the types of things we need to do to address the oil challenge and stop oil companies from profiting from ordinary American
citizens. Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Your minute is up. Mr. Allen, you have 1 minute to answer the question as well.
The interesting thing is that I don't understand why President Biden and this administration are so upset about oil prices being high. They did everything they could to make them go up. They shut down pipelines. They put restrictions on refineries. They stopped drilling in the Anwar region. They took away oil leases. And now they're surprised that oil prices went up. Of course they're going to go up with what they did. They caused it. They said they wanted it on the campaign trail. They said we're going to have a war on fossil fuels. So of course that happened. And as I said in the last answer, what that did when we stopped producing enough natural gas is actually ship jobs to China that's building hundreds of coal plants. That's not helping us. How do we, you go back to where were we 2 years ago? Oil prices were half of this. Do I think the companies have suddenly gotten more greedy? They weren't greedy 2 years ago, but they're greedy now. That's not the reason this is going up. It's due to the policies of this administration, who said this is exactly what they wanted. And now they're upset that it's happening.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Thank you. Your time is up. Josh Molina from Newshawk will ask the next question to Mr. Allen.
Thank you. Proposition 1 on the November ballot would enshrine into the state constitution the rights to choose to have an abortion and contraception. Do you support or oppose Proposition 1? And what restrictions, if any, do you think government should place on abortion rights?
You know, this comes down to the Dobbs ruling, and when I think about that, I'm reminded of a speech Ruth Bader Ginsburg gave in 1992 when she said it was an activist court that passed Roe and it should have been decided by the states. So what the Supreme Court did is exactly what Ruth Bader Ginsburg said in 1992. He gave it back to the states, which means he gave it back, the Supreme Court gave it back to people like you to choose what you wanted to do. And the thing that bothers me about this is the doctors, all the misinformation. They did not outlaw it. A lot of people are running around in order to get votes or get people to contribute to their campaign by saying, hey, abortion, you're not going to be able to have it. That's not true. The Supreme Court didn't say that. Also, the majority of abortions in this country are now done with pills, which you can get on a Zoom call. So we're not going back to 1973, and I get upset when politicians try to scare people simply to get votes. The one thing I would never vote for is the bill that passed Congress that has no restrictions on abortion, because I don't believe you should be able to have an abortion right before the time the baby's born. That's not protecting the rights of the mother. Okay. That's actually killing babies.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Carbajal, to you.
Thank you. Well, I voted for the Protect Women's Health Care Act, which would have codified Roe versus Wade in federal law. It did make it illegal from a federal law perspective. And certainly, the state should not have the right over women's decisions over their reproductive health care and access to abortion. The only decision makers should be women. Women should be making the decisions over their bodies, reproductive health care, and access to abortion. That's really where the decision should lie. Whether it's federal or state, we should have this right, fundamental, available to women across the board. And so I am 100% pro-choice. I am for women making decisions over their bodies, not state governments as a justification. That is absurd. I am 100% for allowing women to make decisions over their body.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. We will continue with another viewer question. This one from Tina Dean. She writes this one directed to candidate Allen. She says, your opponent voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. Constituents in his district are suffering now. If elected, what can you do now that will positively impact voters' pocketbooks at the pump and grocery store? And Representative Carbajal, you will have a chance to address the issue of inflation as well.
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act is a joke. They named it that to make you feel like they were going to reduce inflation, but it wasn't going to do it. And multiple economists and people have said that. If you want to, look, inflation, if you get back to economics, is simply determined by supply and demand. The demand, well, this administration did everything they could to make it worse. For the demand, they gave away a lot of free money. For supply, they put restrictions and regulations on businesses. And then they drove up the cost of energy, which affects the cost of everything. If you wanted to make a model to make inflation worse, you would have done exactly what the administration did. So it's simple. To reduce inflation, we have to do the opposite. We have to stop spending money we don't have, make Congress live under budget laws like you do at home. We have to cut back on business regulations to let businesses thrive. And we got to bring down the price of energy and cost. That's how we have to do it.
Okay, Mr. Carbajal, your response.
7 Nobel Prize winners and over 100 renowned economists said the Inflation Reduction Act would be good for the economy. Not to mention, it saves $300 billion from our national deficit over the next 10 years. The Inflation Reduction Act brings down energy costs, not only at the gas pump in the future, but through the retrofit and investment in appliances and renewable energy. That's really what that achieves. The Inflation Reduction Act goes a long way to also reduce the cost of living for prescription drugs, since Medicare now will be able to negotiate on the free market to be able to pass those on to Medicare recipients and the market, which will stabilize prescription drugs for everyone. We need to do a lot more still, like the Shipping Reform Act, which invested in the Federal Maritime Commission.
Thank you, Mr.
to ensure that they are dealing with shipping companies.
Time is up. Thank you.
Stop gouging the American people.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Jerry Roberts will ask the next question.
Mr. Carbajal, President Biden recently described the Trump-led Republican Party as, quote, semi-fascist. And you, in a recent interview, echoed that comment, citing fascist tendencies in the GOP. Could you explain what you meant, describe what those fascist tendencies are, and then I'll ask Mr. Allen to respond.
Certainly. Well, there's a lot of individuals that have supported what transpired on January 6th, an attempted violent coup against our democracy. There's also many of my colleagues, especially candidates running for Congress this time around, that are continuing to spread the big lie. The big lie that there was massive fraud in our elections. And over 60 times, Republican and Democrat appointed judges said that there was no such thing in the last election. But yet that continues. But look, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can call out those that are fascists, behaving like fascist individuals, promoting the big lie, and govern and work with individuals across the aisle that are willing to work with me to govern. That's why I'm a part of the Problem Solvers Caucus and the Four Country Caucus, made up of veterans, half Democrats, half Republicans.
Thank you, Mr.
Trying to
Carbajal.
put our country over party.
Thank you. Mr. Allen.
You know, I'm a doctor, so we keep talking about January 6th, but it's like me talking about an operation I did that might have not done too well. We can't change that. What we have to do is look at the consequences and learn from it. January 6th, there's millions of people that didn't trust the vote. What are we doing to make sure that that never happens again? That was the real thing we should have gotten out of this, and we're not doing it. And I want to go back to something Mr. Carbajal said about the Inflation Reduction Act. Your own Congressional Budget Office says it's not going to reduce inflation, so that's not true. And 360 economists said that. More importantly, prescription drug prices. You know, this is what happens when politicians do things. They never look at the unintended consequences. What that's going to do, according to multiple studies, is reduce its price controls. It's going to reduce the amount of drugs you have and stop the amount of new drugs. One study shows it will result in the loss of 330 million life years. That's 30 times the life years lost from COVID. And you're going to pay more for health care because you're not going to have these new medicines.
Okay,
so you're going to die sooner, suffer more, and pay more for health care in order to have this quote-unquote prescription drug
Thank you,
prices
Mr. Allen.
down.
Mr. Carbajal, you were addressed directly, so you have 30 seconds to respond to that.
Thank you. I don't know when negotiating on the free market, it means price controls. The only people trying to keep price controls are big pharma and insurance companies. And trying to negotiate better prices for the American people in a free market economy is the right thing to do. I have no idea what is being said by my opponent, but it's terribly wrong.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on now. Josh Molina has the next question.
America's epidemic of school and other mass shootings is a national scandal. Please tell us if you support or oppose the following 3 gun safety proposals: a ban on assault weapons, background checks for concealed carry permits, prohibiting possession of a firearm by anyone convicted of domestic violence.
Mr. Allen, you go first this time.
You know, when we look at gun control, we always pick out little parts of it, and we don't look at the entire problem. You know, we look at assault weapons. We look at domestic violence. Yes, somebody that convicted of domestic violence should probably not have a firearm. But we have to look at the larger question. This always comes up when there's a school shooting. Have you ever noticed there's not a school shooting down in the inner city where there's a lot of guns? Why? Because they harden their schools. So we don't address that problem. And what about the 20,000 people that are killed with guns every year, mostly illegal guns? Why is it we never talk about the illegal guns and how we're going to control that? Those kids that are killed that way, they're just as important as the kids in the schools. And if gun control stopped this, Chicago and New York would be pristine cities, and they're not. So I think we need to get back to looking at what's the issue. Also, we talk about guns because 20,000 people are killed a year. What about fentanyl? With fentanyl, 6 times that many young people are killed. But we don't spend any time on that. We talk only about guns.
Time is up. Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Carbajal.
The simple answer is yes, Josh. I support all the three measures that you've outlined that would bring about gun safety in our country. Look, my sister, when I was a young boy, committed suicide with my father's firearm. In Isla Vista, on the Central Coast that I represent, we had a tragedy where a perpetrator took the lives of many individuals at UCSB's surrounding community of Isla Vista. We need those measures, including the law that we just passed, the Historic Safer Communities Act, which was bipartisan. And it goes to addressing many, many measures, such as increasing red flag laws throughout our country and incentivizing them. That was my bill. It also includes investments in violence programs and towards our schools to make sure we're making them safer, and also includes funding for mental health. All of the things that we've done. Is it perfect? No. A lot more work needs to be done, as you identified.
Thank you, Mr.
But
Carbajal.
we've taken a major step forward.
Thank you. Our next question is also from a viewer. Mr. Carbajal, you will go first this time. Dave Roman writes, though student loan forgiveness will be appreciated by many, should the executive branch have the authority to perform this act? Should this have been accomplished by the legislative branch? You have 1 minute, sir.
I think they will be appreciated by everybody who's able to take advantage of that loan forgiveness that the president is doing now. Certainly, Congress can always also provide legislation to also accomplish it through the legislative process. I think doing it both ways would be great. So I personally have authored bills to also increase financial aid so that individuals seeking a higher education don't have to be bogged down with so much debt. But absolutely, I think there's a lot we can do to bring about public service loan forgiveness as well. There is a lot we could do to continue to bring down the cost of higher education for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Allen?
The student loan program is a typical thing that, as I would say, politicians do. They try to buy your vote by giving you some money. Let's look at what the cause is. The problem is high college tuition. Just how does throwing a lot of money at a problem bring down the college tuition? It doesn't. It makes the college tuition go up. Then you have the unintended consequences of all this free money, which is going to increase inflation, which these kids are going to end up having to pay for when they go out and get jobs and when the government doesn't have money, because it's going to also add to the debt that they're going to be responsible for. So the problem with this is they didn't address the problem of high college tuition. And when did they say they're going to do this? Right before the election. This is a typical thing. They don't get to the root cause. The unintended consequences are horrendous because it's going to do the exact opposite of what they wanted. If I practiced medicine like this, I'd be having malpractice cases all the time. You can't do this. You have to address the problem. You can't just throw money at problems. But as I said, that's what career people tend to do.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Jerry Roberts will ask the next question, and we will begin with Mr. Carbajal this time. Jerry.
The U.S. Justice Department is seeking an additional $34 million specifically for its ongoing investigation and prosecutions of the January 6th insurrection, which it calls the most wide-ranging investigation in its history. Do you support or oppose such additional spending earmarked for the January 6th probe?
Absolutely. All those individuals that committed a crime should be brought to justice, and whatever resources are needed, we need to provide it. Nobody is against the law, not even the former president, who was responsible for lots of what transpired on January 6th. I am supportive of making sure that all those extremist individuals that participated in the January 6th insurrection, a violent coup, are brought to justice. And I will support the resources that are needed for the United States Justice Department to do their job.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Allen?
Yeah, as far as a probe, if it's bipartisan, yes. People that broke the law should go to jail, just like people who riot and broke into businesses during the summer should go to jail. If you break the law, there should be a consequence. And the problem with the committee is it's not bipartisan, but if this probe is going to be bipartisan, if it's looking at just the facts, then I'm all for then I'm all for looking at this, because people should not be able to break the law. I do want to go back to one thing, because I was mentioned by Mr. Carbajal when he said, and I didn't get extra time, about what I'm saying about the Inflation Reduction Act and Medicare and prescription drug prices. These are price controls, and by the way, if you want to know where I said it, it's in the news press. It's in an op-ed, and the resources are there, the hyperlinks, so you can see where it's there, that this is going to impact people's lives. They're going to die sooner, they're going to suffer more without these drugs, and they're going to pay higher health care costs. You don't have to say it, because that wouldn't sound good for your election, but that's the truth.
All right, we're going to move on. Josh Molina is next.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, who many expect will be the House Speaker after the midterm elections, stated this week that if his party takes control of the House, they will put the brakes on aid to Ukraine in its war against Russia. The U.S. to date has sent more than $60 billion in military and non-military aid to Ukraine. Should there be a cap on this spending? And how supportive would you be of additional spending for Ukraine?
Mr. Allen, you're first this time.
Look, Ukraine was probably the easiest war to prevent if we had started and done something up front. But, we have a very weak foreign policy. That's why we had problems in Afghanistan. However, now the Russians are in there, and they're brutalizing civilians. And we have to look at the rest of the world, because if we just pull out now, what the rest of the world learns is that, hey, if we just wait out the U.S., we can do whatever we want. We can brutalize people. We can't let that happen to a dictator. So even though we could have stopped this war very easily, I believe, and didn't, at this point in time, we have to send a message. Otherwise, that's what every dictator will learn. That's what China will learn as far as Taiwan. That's what Iran will learn. That's what North Korea will learn. So I believe we need to support Ukraine, because Putin has to be made to pay so that dictators don't keep doing this. If we look at history, that's the case. And actually, I believe that we ought to speed up the spending, because that'll help end the war if we give Ukraine the assistance they need now, instead of doing it in drips and drabs so that they have to wait and the war just goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Carbajal, to you, 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, I was in Ukraine last December, right before the war started, right before Putin invaded Ukraine. And I am 100% supportive of all the aid that we have voted on today to send to Ukraine, along with the aid that our allies have also done. And we need to stand together to make sure we send a strong message to Putin that NATO, we all stand together and will not let his threats and the incursion in Ukraine stand. We need to be able to impose the sanctions that we've been imposing collectively with our NATO partners, to make sure that he understands that this is not something that we're going to tolerate. And we need to do everything possible, not only in a humanitarian way, but providing them the military support, short of sending men and women, our men and women, to the front lines.
Thank you, Mr.
And I think
Carbajal.
we've been taking the right approach.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next question now for the candidates, beginning with Mr. Carbajal. ExxonMobil recently purchased the pipeline that ruptured in the Refugio oil spill in 2015 from Plains All American. Over 100,000 gallons of oil spilled. The shoreline was coated with oil for miles. No oil has gone through those pipelines in the last 7 years. ExxonMobil wants to get the pipelines moving oil onshore again from their 3 platforms off the Santa Barbara County coast. So the question is, if they could repair the pipelines, would you support the plan? Mr. Carbajal, you are first.
Well, first and foremost, those are local land use decisions. But my record is clear. I'm for weaning ourselves off of fossil fuels and for making sure that we are investing in renewable energy. Certainly, the local decision makers are going to look at the environmental impacts of such decisions and whether that is something that they can support. But I will tell you, the quicker we wean ourselves off of fossil fuels and move towards investing in renewable energy, the better. I am not for new offshore oil drilling or future offshore oil development. That's only going to hinder our ability to address this climate crisis and to be able to take us back instead of forward.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Allen, the question to you.
I would agree that it's a local decision, and I'm not for more drilling off the California coast. But as I've said before, if we think all drilling is bad, we're actually making the environment worse. And I'm all for renewables, but once again, the politicians have to really look at what's the cost of renewables. You know, we tend to forget that renewables wear out, and you have to put them somewhere. They're toxic. Already that's happening in Los Angeles, and the New York and the LA Times wrote about it. And you know, they're expensive. We got to get the rare earth minerals from somewhere, and they're mined, and that causes a problem with the environment. So it's not just a win-win situation. You know, it's like Diablo Canyon. It's more than a energy producer. You could make water there. You can make hydrogen there. And you know, I know that the plant off of Morro Bay people talk about a lot because it's going to be renewables. That's going to be $3 to $4 trillion to do that. And to replace Diablo Canyon you'll need 5 to 10 of those solutions at a cost of $30 to $40 trillion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Your time is up. Jerry Roberts will handle the next question. That will first go to Mr. Allen.
Governor Newsom recently signed legislation making California the first state to create a sanctuary for transgender youths from other states who come here seeking so-called gender-affirming medical care, such as hormones, puberty blockers, and sex reassignment surgeries. At a time when other states are passing restrictions or even criminalizing such treatments, do you agree with the thrust of that bill and the direction California is taking?
Mr. Allen, you're first on this one.
No, I don't. You know, the best studies on transgender come out of Sweden. It was a 30-year study, and what they found was transitioning and all these things did not change the suicide rate, which is about 20%. It did not change the psychiatric problems, which is 2 to 3 times the general population. Johns Hopkins stopped doing this surgery years ago because they noticed people didn't change the suicide rate. Having a child who you don't think has the mental capacity to make any other life-changing decisions, let them drive a car, let them have a gun, let them do these other things, you're going to let them make a decision on their body that could forever change them, make them sterile. They have huge consequences, these drugs. If an adult wants to do that, that's up to the adult. They should have the right to do whatever they want to do. But to do this to children, or to have children decide when they can make no other choices, to make decisions that will affect their life the rest of their life, and to take that away from the parents, no, I don't agree.
Mr. Carbajal, you have 1 minute.
I agree with what California is doing. I am part of the LGBTQ caucus in Washington. I voted for the Equality Act, which would bring about civil rights for all LGBTQ plus individuals as part of our civil rights law that exists today. I fought to ensure that the DOD, Department of Defense, does not discriminate against transgender individuals. I am 100% for making sure that their civil rights are protected, their civil liberties and their freedoms here in California are protected.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Josh Molina will ask the next question.
Thank you. A recent government report stated that environmental disasters around the globe now displace more people than armed conflicts in their own countries. Yet no nation in the world offers asylum to climate migrants. As the world grapples with climate change, should the U.S. create such an asylum program? And to what extent would you support financing it?
Mr. Carbajal, you're first this time.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I heard the entire question, but I will do my best. I think the United States has a humanitarian role in the world to make sure that we are assisting, along with our other industrialized nations that are more advanced economically and financially stable, to assist those countries in various ways in a humanitarian fashion, to ensure that they have some of the technology, some of the resources to help them become self-sufficient, to help them have enough food grown in their countries, to make sure that there's no famine, that we end food security, that they have essential medicines available to them, that they have essential infrastructure development with the World Bank I believe we can do a lot through USAID and to help those countries. And we have a responsibility with other industrialized nations.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Allen?
I think asylum seekers with a legitimate reason to come here, whatever the reason is, we should provide help to those people. But they should come here legally, not illegally. Our problem is not with legal immigration. Our problem, we're the most generous country in the world. We admit over 1 million legal immigrants a year. So that's not our problem. But I agree with bringing people in that need asylum. Our problem is with illegal immigration, and that problem could easily be solved. I have a contract to restore California on my website. Go there. The answer is very simple. It doesn't happen because politicians are more concerned about votes. And so all they want to know about is citizenship for people, not bringing people here and having them have the right to work and help America have the workers that they need. If it doesn't involve citizenship and they're not getting votes, they're not interested in voting for it. But as far as asylum seekers, any legitimate asylum seeker, I agree, the U.S. should be able to take those in.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. You will get this question first this time. Governor Newsom recently signed legislation that would extend the lifespan of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Representative Carbajal, you have urged caution and continued dialogue with community stakeholders in the wake of this decision. The question for both candidates, first to Mr. Allen, do you think extending Diablo Canyon's lifespan to 2030 is the right decision? And how supportive are you of nuclear power as a source of clean energy?
Absolutely, we should do that. Because first of all, we look at this all wrong. If we save Diablo Canyon for the next 25 years, we save Californians $21 billion in energy costs. We save California 90,000 acres of land that would otherwise have to be used to produce power. And if we put a desalination plant there, we can have enough water for millions of Californians, as much or exceed what would be from the Delta Convergence Project at less of an environmental impact. If we put a hydrogen plant there, we can produce hydrogen to power these things. So we have to stop looking at Diablo Canyon just as that. And if you want to talk about nuclear waste, yes, but then start looking at the waste that comes from renewables. Those batteries, they wear out and they have to be put someplace. So, and as far as I said, wind farms, you'd need 5 to 10 of those wind farms at a cost of $30 to $40 trillion to replace Diablo Canyon. So the choice.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Carbajal, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Provided that the operations are safe and that the increased spent nuclear fuel can be stored safely, I am supportive of the governor's desire to temporarily extend Diablo Canyon till 2030. But what we need to do is really invest in renewable energy to make sure that all those projects, offshore wind, is ready to come online after 2030, so that there's a reconciliation of our renewable offshore wind project with the closure of Diablo Canyon. But I am supportive of the governor's extension, provided that it's temporary.
Thank you. Jerry Roberts has our next question.
Dr. Allen states on his website that Democrats, quote, stopped following the science ages ago on the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to ask both of you what you believe the science says about COVID vaccines and boosters, and what would you tell a constituent who asks how many shots they and members of their family should receive?
Mr. Carbajal, it's your turn to go first.
Well, first, the experts, the many doctors at CDC who have the responsibility for keeping our country safe have told us what the science says, that COVID-19 still poses a threat to those that are unvaccinated. And the more people are vaccinated and take the additional boosters, the safer they will be from getting serious illness and sickness, and certainly from dying. The science has ferreted that out, that the vaccinations work. They keep us from getting seriously ill and from dying. And what I would say is, if you have not been vaccinated, please consider getting vaccinated. And please consider listening to the doctors, the many doctors who have great expertise in this area at CDC, who are responsible for epidemiology and this type of medicine to advise us. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Allen, to you.
You can find an article on my website that goes over the immune response and how the vaccines work with COVID and for a lot of the details. But basically why I said that is the vaccine gives you internal immunity in your blood, but COVID enters through your mucosa in your nose, which is why I said 2 years ago we were all going to get COVID because we don't have any immunity there from a vaccine. And that's exactly what happened. And so when we kept these lockdowns going, which Sweden didn't, which a lot of Europe didn't, when we had school closures, we used this as an excuse. And now Governor Newsom's put a bill in to tell us that what the government thinks is the COVID risk. This is the scariest thing. I'm not allowed now anymore to tell you what I think about COVID. You know, there was 2 articles that came out yesterday, one out of Stanford that showed that the mortality risk for COVID is much lower than ever. Let's pick one because I don't have time. 0 to 19, the risk of dying is 0.0003%. You have about a 10 times greater chance of being hit by lightning. And by the way, over 80% of those will be kids that have comorbidities. And we also...
Thank you, sir. That time is up on that question. Let's go to Josh Molina for our next question.
Okay, thank you. Former Los Angeles City Council member Nury Martinez resigned after she was caught making racist slurs. Do you believe Los Angeles City Councilman Kevin De Leon should resign for his role in the recordings and tolerating these comments? And how would you respond if you heard someone making racist slurs in your presence?
Mr. Allen, it's your turn to go first.
Well, you know, the problem, look, I'm a believer in Martin Luther King, and as you should be judged by not the color of your skin, but the content of your character. As a heart surgeon, I've operated on just about every creed, color, race that there is. And I can tell you, when you get through the skin, everybody looks the same. So I don't look at people by any of those measures. And if I heard somebody saying a racist comment, I wouldn't tolerate that. I'd call them out. The problem I have now is that we're almost making it worse because we're judging people solely by the color of their skin. If you're a brown person, you get this thing. If you're a black person, you get this. We got to stop doing that. Go back to Martin Luther King. We should be judging people not on the color of their skin, not on their sexual orientation, not on their gender. We should be judging them by the content of their character, and that's how I've always worked. And I would be upset with anybody that didn't follow that.
Thank you. Mr. Carbajal, you have 1 minute.
Yes, I believe that anybody who makes and holds those values should resign. There's no place in elected office for anybody like that. Just as I said, when former President Trump made racist remarks during the campaign and while he was president, those values are not fit for anybody serving in public office. And I just believe that in order to really start healing, individuals that commit and say those things should resign. And if I was in a room where that was said, I would call it out and not tolerate it. We all have a responsibility to speak out when we see those things, if we're truly going to live by the values that we say we abide by.
Thank you both. Our next question is from a viewer. Lorraine Woodman asks, we know that passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, while important, is not enough to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to safe levels. She says some economists and scientists believe that putting a tax on carbon is a highly effective way to accomplish this. What efforts are being undertaken to implement such a measure? And is there currently any Republican support? Again, that from Lorraine Woodman, directed first to Mr. Carbajal.
Well, thank you very much. I have co-sponsored with my Republican colleague, Representative Fitzpatrick, the carbon fee and dividend legislation that would actually do what we've seen in other countries, like we've seen in Canada. It actually works. It's a free market-based framework that was actually introduced by Republicans. Go figure that. And it's something that I think would really go a long way in a substantive way to put a price on carbon and to be able to send those dividends back to the American people or invest them in our infrastructure. Either way, it's a win-win-win. That legislation and putting a fee on carbon would go a long way to also addressing the climate crisis.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Allen, you have 1 minute.
Yes, I also believe that a carbon tax would be very helpful. I think we also have to learn by what happens in the world. You know, Europe tried to go green a few years ago, and now they're finding out it didn't work too well because energy costs went through the roof. They're now all of a sudden France is going to build 14 nuclear power plants. Belgium's going to build 3. You know, we keep going to renewables without remembering that nuclear is clean. It doesn't produce any carbon. And so I believe the carbon tax helps, but we got to remember also renewables are not we don't have the technology to do that today. Not making it clean. Those things still have to be mined. We forget that hurts the environment. We have to dispose of them. That hurts the environment. It's very expensive. If California thinks their energy costs are high now, wait till we have 10 wind farms out in Morro Bay. Those will be much, much more expensive, and your energy costs are just going to go up. So it's great to talk about these things because we all want a cleaner planet.
Thank you.
But we got to look at the side effects and the unintended consequences.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Jerry Roberts will ask our next question, returning to the topic of inflation.
Yeah, doubling back on inflation, I have a separate question for each of you. First, Dr. Allen. On your website, you state that cutting federal government spending will, quote, conquer inflation, close the quote. And just for context, total government outlays for the current fiscal year, according to the Congressional Budget Office, are $6.8 trillion, of which 70% is identified as mandatory spending, such as Social Security and Medicare. Half of the rest goes to the Pentagon. Could you please identify 3 specific programs you think should be cut that would put a dent in inflation?
Well, I think the thing, you know, here's the problem. We've added so much to the debt it took us 200 years to get the first $1 trillion in debt. And now under this administration, they're adding $1 trillion every quarter. As you just said, they're spending money faster than they can print it. Our debt is now $31 trillion, and the interest on the debt will soon be over $1 trillion a year, which means it's going to be higher than defense spending, higher than Medicare, higher than health care, and soon it'll pass Social Security. So this is not an easy answer. What first thing we have to do, though, is Congress has got to start living by the same budget rules you live by in your house. We got to cut the congressional credit card. The debt is like a credit card, and the kids are going to end up paying for it. The same kids who vote for these like student bailouts are going to be paying for it when we add to the national debt. So as far as this, we have to get back to only fund, we have $200 billion, I think, out there for schools that were given for COVID.
Thank you.
We can start to crawl back some of that money to pay down the debt.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Jerry, you have a specific question on inflation for Mr. Carbajal.
Yeah, Mr. Carbajal, since Democrats took over the White House and both houses of Congress in 2021, President Biden has signed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan for pandemic benefits, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act with a price tag of $750 billion. Isn't it a fact that this $3.6 trillion in new spending has been a major driver of inflation?
Well, I would say if you consider the Inflation Reduction Act, it's going to reduce the budget deficit by $300 billion over the next 10 years. And it's entirely paid for by making sure that the top billionaires are paying finally their fair share of income tax. What we need to do is really focus on taking away the loopholes and subsidies. Can you believe that we still provide to oil companies? To take away some of the increased tax breaks that the Republican Party gave away during the last administration to the top 1% billionaires. 83% of the value went to the top 1% billionaires and corporations. Those are the types of things we need to do to make sure that we are closing the deficit, closing our national debt, and addressing this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Josh Molina has our next question.
Thank you. What can you do from Washington to support farmers and farm workers at a time when the agricultural industry is threatened by a historic drought?
Mr. Carbajal, first to you.
Thank you. Well, my father was a farm worker. I worked with him many a summers. I know the hard work that farm workers do day in and day out, oftentimes with not a whole lot of pay. I also represent a region whose number one industry is agriculture. I helped put together the Farm Workforce Modernization Act with the United Farm Workers, with the Western Growers, with the California Farm Bureau, with the Chamber of Commerce, a cross-section of stakeholders that would provide a legalization path for farm workers and their families and provide a sustained workforce for our agriculture industry. I'm very proud of that work. We've also moved forward the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, which invests billions of dollars to addressing our drought and water security sources. Those are the types of things that I've done and that I know need to be done in order for us to address these important issues that you raised.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Allen, to you.
Look, the people of California, I think, have passed 9 bond measures in the last 30 years, and we haven't constructed a new dam since 1979. You guys keep passing it, the politicians keep taking the money away. We could do a lot of things. They could raise the dams on Lake Shasta and Lake Nacimiento, which would hold more water. That was also why I brought up Diablo Canyon. That could provide enough water for millions of Californians with very little environmental impact, much more so than the Delta Convergence Project. We also, as far as immigration goes, as I said, if you go to my website and you look at Contract to Restore California, I have a way to solve immigration to help farmers. And I want to bring up one other thing, Jerry, to answer your question about the bills that Congress passed. He was the former Secretary of Treasury under Clinton, and he also worked as Obama. He said that those bills were going to cause inflation. Congress passed them anyway. And as far as saving, we're going to save this off of the deficit, that reminds me of the guy who has a weight loss clinic. He gains 100 pounds, and when he loses 3, he only talks about the 3 pounds he lost. This is what politicians do.
Sir, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Carbajal, you were referenced there. You have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, I think what's been said is totally inaccurate, and I couldn't agree further.
Okay, I'll ask the next question. Some states prohibit clinics that provide abortions from receiving public funds for birth control. What role should the federal government play in making sure people have access to birth control and contraceptives? Or is this an issue that should be decided by each state? Mr. Allen, you're first.
Well, it's a hard question because then it depends. Are you going to have religious exemptions? Are you going to have, if the clinic is run by a church, do they have to abide by it? Look, I think women should have, and they do. Planned Parenthood is getting hundreds of millions of dollars in donations, and they do provide this. So it's not as though these people don't have access to this. I would agree that women should have access to contraception. I do. But I think you can't take away religious rights to places that don't want to or don't believe in this. But yes, I would go with that people should have rights to a contraception. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carbajal, to you.
Well, let me say that I believe first we need to get rid of the Hyde Amendment, which precludes funding to go towards assisting women to have access to abortion and more contraception. Over 160 of my colleagues across the aisle voted for legislation and introduced legislation, should I say, to ban various contraceptions medication available to women. That is abhorrent. I do believe that we need to do everything possible for women to have access to contraception and access to a safe abortion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Jerry Roberts has the next question.
Dr. Allen has called for term limits for those elected to the House of Representatives to end what he calls the problem of career politicians. I have a separate question for each of you on this. I guess Mr. Carbajal is first. Scott?
Yes, it is his turn to go first.
Okay. So how about it? Do you want to announce tonight that you're going to place a limit on the number of terms you'll seek election?
Well, you know, unless the Constitution's changed, members of Congress, there's no term limits. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. But I will tell you, every election, every 2 years, we have term limits on the ballot because the electorate gets to decide if their representatives are doing a good enough job or not, to keep them continuing to represent them or to throw them out. That is the best form of term limits. And I'm supportive of the way the system is right now. That's why it forces every representative to work hard and make sure that they're meeting the needs of their electorate, the residents that they represent, that they're providing great customer service, constituent service, that they are fighting for the values and the priorities of the constituents that they represent, like me here on the Central Coast. I have worked hard to do so and will continue doing that again. And I believe that the residents of the Central Coast will vote again for me and send me to represent them.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Jerry, you continue with your question for Mr. Allen.
What should the term limits be in your view? And wouldn't such a plan just put more power in the hands of lobbyists and career staff members while reducing the institutional knowledge among congressional members?
No, I don't agree. I think that what we should be doing is term limits, because we get these career politicians that are there for 30, 40 years. They spend their entire life and they try to tell you that they are public servants. They're not. This is this is their job, and this is all they know. And I think it's better to have people that come in, like myself, in healthcare. I always say to people, would you bring a politician in to fix your hospital? No. But then we let them run our entire healthcare service. For instance, Secretary Becerra has never run a healthcare system in his life. He's our Secretary of Health and Human Services. It'd be like letting your kid learn to drive by somebody who's never driven before. So I believe the term limit should be there. I would limit the House of Representatives to maybe 6 terms and senators to 2 terms. Because I think bringing people in with different ideas and different knowledge, like somebody in healthcare, somebody in business, is going to provide a much better representation of the people, and we'll be better able to solve problems than somebody who's just been in government all their life.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. That concludes the question portion of our Congressional Forum. We'll now move on to closing statements. We'll begin with Mr. Allen. You have 1 minute.
Look, we're in trouble. You heard it tonight. We got inflation. We got high gas prices. We got high rent. We got high food. We got crime. We got homelessness. We got immigration. We didn't have enough time to check on all the problems that we have. And you know the interesting thing? None of these issues were an issue 2 years ago. They were simply here now because of the policies that this administration has put on, that Salud Carbajal has voted for over and over again. He's been proud of it. This is because he no longer represents you. He represents his party. He's just representing the ideologues. Look, he's even said, as I said, he's proud of it. He'd go back and he'd do it all again. If somebody came to me with this kind of a resume for a job interview, I wouldn't hire him with this disaster. I want to bring something different. I want to actually represent you, not bring political ideology to Washington. I want to take the 40 years I have as a pediatric heart surgeon solving problems and bring that to Washington, not empty political talking points.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr.
Me,
Carbajal,
please.
Mr. Carbajal, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm very proud of my public service. If serving in the United States Marine Corps isn't public service, serving for our country, I don't know what is. I'm proud of having served in local government, representing my community. They voted for me to represent them. I have a record. That's what sets me apart from my opponent. I believe in climate change. My opponent does not. I believe in expanding our healthcare delivery system and the Affordable Care Act and making sure people are protected with pre-existing illnesses. My opponent does not. I believe that women should make decisions over their bodies and for their reproductive health care and access to abortion. My opponent believes that states should do that. I will keep fighting for all these issues, for the Central Coast values, and I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you, Representative Carbajal, and thank you, Dr. Allen. That concludes our Congressional Forum for the 24th District of California. We want to thank our viewers for watching and submitting questions, as well as our panelists, Josh Molina and Jerry Roberts. For more information on all the major local races in the 2020 midterm elections, you can go to our website, keyt.com/voter guide. or check out our mobile app. For your news channel, I'm Scott Hennessy. Thanks for joining us.